Hello and welcome to the local campaign. I'm Roger Peterson from City News. On October 19th, Canada will elect the 42nd Parliament, and Rogers TV is the only station producing debates in all of Toronto's 25 ridings. For the next hour, you'll hear from the candidates of Scarborough Agincourt. Now, 2015 marks the beginning of electoral riding redistribution, so boundaries in the majority of the ridings have changed, along with some riding names. So before I introduce the candidates, let's take a closer look at the newly redrawn riding of Scarborough Agincourt. Agincourt.
The riding of Scarborough Agincourt stretches from Highway 401 in the south to the City of Toronto York Region border in the north. Victoria Park Avenue is the western border, Midland Avenue on the east. Bridlewood Mall and Agincourt Mall are in this riding. High schools that are located here include Mary Ward Catholic Secondary School, Lamoureux Collegiate, Sir John A. Macdonald Collegiate, and Dr. Norman Bethune Collegiate. A notable hub in this riding is around the intersection of McNichol Avenue and Kennedy Road. Here you'll find the Lamoureux Community Centre and Sports Complex and the Kidstown Water Park. The incumbent MP for Scarborough Agincourt is Liberal Party member Arnold Chang.
You've met the riding. Now I'll give you a chance to meet the candidates. I'll introduce them and then they will have their opening statements. Bin Chang is a Conservative candidate. Thank you, Bin. Laura Patrick is from the NDP. Arnold Chan is from the Liberals. And Jude Coutinho is from the Christian Heritage Party. Thank you all for joining us today. And so we're going to start with their opening statements from each candidate. They'll have 1 minute and we will start with you, Bin.
Hello, I'm Bin Chan, the Conservative candidate in Scarborough Agincourt. I came to Canada in 2001 as an international student. When I first came to Canada, I only brought 2 suitcases with me. I left my families and friends behind, but I was welcomed in Canada. So many people have helped me, and I think it's my time to help other people. And I feel that Canada is the best country in the world. Canadians are the best people in the world. As a professor, I can help hundreds of students every year. But as a member of parliament in Scarborough Agincourt, I can help 100,000 constituents. And when I work in Ottawa, I can help 34 million Canadians. It's my time to give back to this country I love.
Bin, thank you very much. Bin Chang, the Conservative candidate. Laura Patrick from the NDP. Laura?
Thank you, Rogers, and thank you to all the viewers that are tuning in today. I'm Laura Patrick, I'm your NDP candidate in Scarborough Agincourt. So I'd like to introduce myself first of all. I grew up in Scarborough with my grandfather, who's nearly 90, and my mother. And growing up, my grandfather always said he didn't believe in politics. He said, you know, politics will never do anything for us. They never have, they never will. And it's true that Scarborough has been neglected over the years by all 3 levels of government. And so I went into politics in 2011 when I heard Jack Layton say that he was going to do politics differently and that a better system is possible and don't let them tell you it can't be done. And so that's when I bought my membership to the NDP. And we have a plan to make life easier for you, and I hope to be able to explain some more of that later on into the program.
Okay. Laura, thank you very much. Laura Patrick of the NDP. Arnold Chan now of the Liberal Party. Arnold.
Thank you, Roger, and thank you to Rogers Television for hosting this debate. My name is Arnold Chan, and I'm your Liberal candidate here in Scarborough Agincourt. This past year, it has been an honor serving as your Member of Parliament. And since I've gone up to Ottawa, I've learned that Ottawa, in fact, is broken, that, in fact, our economy is not performing as well as it ought to. In fact, we are now in our 2nd recession under Stephen Harper's watch. Stephen Harper would have you believe that Canada cannot do better, but we know that is not the case. In fact, we know that with us working together, that it is possible to do better, for us to invest in transit so that you're not spending all your time in traffic, that it is possible to invest in seniors, and that it is possible to make a difference and to lift all Canadians rather than just those who are already doing well. I'm looking forward to this debate and sharing our Liberal vision for a better Canada.
Arnold, thank you very much. Arnold Chan, the Liberal member, and now Jude Coutinho, who's the Christian Heritage Party. Jude.
Thank you. My name is Jude Coutinho, and I'm with the Christian Heritage Party of Canada. And what I strongly believe that we need a strong economy, a great environment, and Canada is definitely one of the best countries, a great country to live in. We got to remember that we have been blessed to live in this great country because we abided with God's laws and teachings. We see a great transgression in this direction in the recent years, especially now we are looking at the new curriculum which is being implemented since September, which is the radical sex ed curriculum, which is really not appropriate for the children who are in elementary school to get this kind of information. There has been a great decline in values, moral values, and that's where I feel that we need to step up and make sure that we are in the right direction.
Okay, Jude, thank you very much. Jude Coutinho of the Christian Heritage Party. We will now begin our question and answer period of the debate. Each candidate will be given 30 seconds to respond, and then we will open it up to a discussion for everyone. And our first question, and Ben will have you answer the first one. Increasing traffic congestion, crumbling expressways, and overtaxed utilities lead critics to say that our urban infrastructure is not keeping up with our needs. What do you see as the key infrastructure need in Scarborough Agincourt, and how should the federal government respond to this issue? Ben, you have 30 seconds.
Yeah, I'm from a small village of 7 million people, so I know what transit means in big cities. The federal government has already set $2.6 billion aside for transit in Toronto, including Scarborough Agincourt. But Scarborough Agincourt has been Liberal riding for more than 2 decades, and it's obvious that Liberal has not done a good job in Scarborough Agincourt to help the transit.
Okay, Ben, thank you very much. Laura.
Federal leadership and investment in transit are vital to a healthier economy and a healthier environment in Toronto. The NDP will develop a national transit strategy in collaboration with the provinces and the cities. We'll make investments of $60 billion, and the GTA's share will be $12.9 billion, and that will be to improve our local infrastructure in both transit and other, what's the word? Infrastructure. Okay. Yes.
Laura, thank you. And Arnold.
Transit has been an absolute priority for me since I've been elected to the House of Commons last year. In fact, it was the first question that I asked in the House of Commons. I'm proud that I've advanced within our caucus and now reflected in the Liberal Party platform an unprecedented $20 billion commitment over 10 years that will be dedicated just to public transit so that transit systems like the Scarborough subway can ultimately be built because there will be predictable, long-term, and flexible funding from the federal government.
All right, Arnold, thank you. And Jude.
The transit system has been a heart of the residents in Scarborough Agincourt, especially the off and on constant battle between the provincial and the federal about having a subway line being implemented along the Shepherd line versus the tram. And there has been a debate back and forth, going forth, as to we should have trams rather than subway, and the people were saying no, that cause more congestion and it will be very difficult to commute with the trams on the road. So I'm very much favorable that we have a subway line for the Shepherd line as well.
Okay, Jude, thank you very much. Now, would anybody like to respond to what was said by the other candidates?
Well, I think what's really important is that when you look at the plans that are before the particular parties, ours, in fact, is by far the most robust. And the key difference here is that there's an actual dedicated transit fund. It's long-term, it's predictable, and it's flexible. So what is really important is that we're actually giving municipalities the tools that they need so they can actually plan something like the Scarborough subway and know that that funding will be coming from the federal government. And the difference between us and the New Democratic Party is that our funding, our commitment is immediate. It's not going to be sometime in the future. We have 2 other parties here that are committed to a balanced budget.
We'll let Arnold, we'll let them respond. Ben, would you like to respond?
Yes. Only the Conservatives' plan is affordable and deliverable. We promise, we deliver. But because we have balanced the budget, we have surplus. Last year, the Conservative already had $1.9 billion surplus. This year, Q1, we have $5 billion surplus. It means we have the money to spend on the infrastructure. Actually, in our first 9 years in we spent $12.3 billion in infrastructure in Ontario. That's 3 times of what the Liberal government has done in infrastructure in Ontario. And we also have $53 billion new Building Canada plan, $53 billion. And that's affordable because we have surplus, we have money to do it. Look at the Liberal and the NDP. They plan to have deficit, 10 billion of deficit every year permanently. They just don't have money to deliver any promise.
Okay, Laura.
Sure, I didn't get the chance to say that I also support a Scarborough subway. But also these negotiations that we're going to have with the cities are going to be difficult negotiations. And that's why we have the National Transit Strategy, and it's also why we're going to establish a Minister of Urban Affairs. And so that minister will ensure the interests of cities are heard in Parliament, and will work out that relationship. So I think that's something that's really important that we have in our plan as well.
Jude?
And I would like to add the working together. It's like we have to work together as a country, as the province and the federal. We depend on each other to work as a team. And if we keep pushing the buck and say, like, the federal is not supporting, so I can't go ahead with the project, and if the provincial is saying I can't get the money from the federal, it's not going to work out. So we have to work together to see the infrastructure. It's great to have extra buildings. When I was going last week to on the 401, it was just packed. I just can't move. It's like 10. Like, I'm stuck. I've got to go for a prayer meeting at 6:30. I leave the office at 5:40ish. I can't get there till 7 o'clock. So it's like 1.5 hours behind the wheel, just stuck. So we need to look at easing out the subway. The highways, the subway is great, will help to take off the load.
Absolutely.
All right, would anybody?
Yes, in the past 25 years, this has been Liberal riding, but we don't see any improvement in public transit. Actually, it's getting worse. It means the Liberal has not done its own job in Scarborough Agincourt, and it's time for a change to get a Conservative here.
Let me answer that particular charge, because it's been put on the table. Let's keep in mind that it was a Liberal government that actually brought in the municipal gas tax, that actually gave municipalities much greater fiscal flexibility and funding, predictable long-term funding, so that they could actually deal with infrastructure. So I won't take any lectures from my Conservative friend here with respect to the commitment that the Liberal Party has had. At the end of the day, the decision-making with respect to public transit is a provincial and municipal matter. Where the federal government must play an important role is to make sure that there is long-term, predictable funding, and that has come from the Liberal Party.
Okay. Well, how about we'll move on to our next question, kind of mix this all in. We're going to talk about what Jude brought up with the gridlock and that. And so the question is, of course, we were talking about transit being a major concern. The TTC is facing another budget shortfall. Gridlock is blamed for costing billions to the city's economy, and many critics say the answer is that well-funded transit strategy for the GTA and beyond. Where does the government fit in with fixing that transit woes, along with infrastructure as well? And we'll start, Laura, with you.
Start with me. Okay, so I think I answered some of that in the previous question.
It's we're kind of an amalgam of 2 questions here.
Yes.
Well, in terms of fixing the problems with gridlock and as well with transit, that was the question. Mm-hmm. So I think I said in the previous one that we would develop a national transit strategy, and we would also have a Minister of Urban Affairs. And so together, those 2 things, we will work with them to collaborate with the provinces, with the cities, with the TTC, and to make sure that things get done. And I actually take the TTC. I think that's something that I wasn't able to mention before. I am a TTC rider. I understand the issues. And we've been promised the Scarborough subway for 50 years. And I'm someone that's dedicated to getting it done. We put the $12.9 billion in there. We're going to do it.
We'll cut you off there. And Arnold.
Well, absolutely. And what I think is really important is that we recognize the Federation of Canadian Municipalities has said that there is a growing infrastructure deficit across the country of at least $2 billion a year. And that's just for municipalities. That's not to deal with provincial or federal infrastructure. So this is the time to make unprecedented investments in infrastructure. We have absolutely the lowest interest rate environment ever globally. We know there's an infrastructure deficit. We know that, in fact, that the debt to GDP ratio, which the Liberals brought down from the Mulroney government, down to unprecedented levels. So this is the time to invest.
All right, we'll cut you off there. Jude.
Well, it's a great thing to see as I mentioned before, the buildings are coming up in Scarborough Agincourt. Now we see there's a little vacant land, and there comes up a high-rise building. A little vacant, a mall is broken down, 6 more buildings coming up. So we have, which is great, which is helping the infrastructure, but then we need the mechanism to support those buildings. And we are going to look at those toll routes now. Then we'll look at some new avenues. We have the 427, which is not 420, the 407, which is a toll route. Why don't we open it up? Why don't we, the federal government say we spent so many billions of dollars to have that route, we'll free it up for the public.
I'm going to have to cut you off there, Jude. We can come back to all this, though. And Bin.
Yes, and just as I have said, we have the Conservative Party has $53 billion new Building Canada plan, and we can do it with a balanced budget. If you look at Liberal, they always promise, I'm going to invest this, invest that. They never answer a question, where does the money come from? They have deficit. They plan to have multi-billion dollars deficit year after year permanently, which means they just don't have any money to deliver their promise. And he just mentioned debt. You have to pay off debt, pay interest, pay principal. The final,
we're going to have to cut you off there, but you can come back to it. Anybody like to respond?
I don't think we're going to take any lectures with respect to the Conservative Party on the issue of debt. Of the $616 billion of national debt, $439 billion of that debt has come under Conservative Party rule, both under Stephen Harper and Brian Mulroney. In fact, nearly $160 billion of that billion dollars of that debt has come under Stephen Harper's watch. Yeah. So let's not talk about whose record on deficit. In fact, keep in mind too that it was a Liberal government that paid down almost $100 billion of debt before Stephen Harper took over. So the question is, where are we now? We know that economic growth is incredibly tepid. What we need now is a stimulus plan. We're in the second recession under Stephen Harper. So this is the time to invest. Keep in mind, I'll give you some.
Arnold, we'll let Bin respond to that.
Actually, the economy is doing well. In the last 2 months, we had economic growth, and we have seen the export has rebounded. All the independent agencies forecast that we're going to have economic growth in the second half of this year. Look at Liberals' plan. Deficit, deficit, and deficit. They just don't have the money to deliver any promise. With the deficit, what can they do? Raise tax. That's the only reaction to deficit. They are going to raise tax, and raising tax will kill jobs, will kill the economy. I have heard a lot of ways to fix the economy, for example, cut tax, but their plan is to have deficit and increase tax. Can you increase tax and fix and grow the economy? No way. Okay. And the Liberals' way will not work.
All right, Jude.
Well, it's not about one party is right or the other is wrong, but basically we got to look at it as a national issue, as my issue. If the country is in debt, it's my issue. Now, our debt should be treated as a mortgage. It just as we have a personal mortgage, and we think about it as a mortgage with an amortization of 25 years. So I say, in the next 25 years, I'm going to knock it off. It's my own mortgage. It's my own life. Now, the Bank of Canada could make interest-free loans to provinces, municipalities, and other local authorities for locally chosen infrastructure projects. Making it possible, the Bank of Canada would be reinstated to its former role, which controlled the amount of money created mainly by lending to the government significant amounts of new money as needed, while at the same time controlling the amount of money created by commercial banks through the statutory reserve system. So this way we could have a solution.
Sure. So actually, in the GTA, our commute times are longer than in New York City, than in London. It's more than $11 billion in lost productivity. This is something that's an investment. We put money into infrastructure, and we'll get something out of that. We'll get money. We'll get economic growth. So that's why we really need to invest in that. That's why we're putting $12.9 billion into this, because it's not about spending. It's about spending in ways in which we get something back.
Okay.
Let me give you an analogy. If you have a business, just like our economy that's failing, you can either fire your sales force and shut your business down, or you can rewrite your business plan, go back to the bank, and ask for a loan to invest in capital to grow your economy. Our growth has been very tepid here in Canada. We need a growth-oriented agenda in order to deal with exactly the issues that Ben has raised.
Okay. Well, that might segue into our next question then, and we're talking about debts. In the wake of the 2008 recession, governments around the world went into deficits to stimulate the economy. The government just announced the budget is balanced, and a year earlier than planned, but some think the sluggish economy still needs some work and some government stimulus. With the national debt at $612 billion, should we raise taxes, run a deficit, or boost economic activity, or is it more important to balance the budget? And Arnold, you're first.
Absolutely. I'm proud to be part of a Liberal plan that recognizes that we need to stimulate our economy. Growth under Stephen Harper has been the worst since the Great Depression. It's been tepid. And they like to tout their 1.3 million net new jobs, but they forget that in many cases that's precarious employment, or even worse, that areas like youth unemployment are nearly 3 times worse than the average for adults over 25. So we need to put a plan in place that actually grows our economy more rapidly than it has been. Okay, we are the only economy that is right now still in recession. I'll have to cut you off there.
We can come back to it though. Jude.
So we got to look back. If we look back in the past, then we can look at where we are at the present, and then we can look where we are going in the future. So we got to have a 3-4 mind. What did I do wrong? What am I doing right? And what I can do right in the future. Now we go back to World War II. Canada enacted a plan very much like this. A construction activity touched off by that policy created the longest lasting economic boom in Canadian history. Now the GST, we all crib about the GST and the HST.
Okay, Jude, I'm going to have to cut you off. Our first answer is only 30 seconds.
30
long.
seconds.
You can come back to it though. Bin.
Yeah, since the 2009 recession, Canada actually has fully recovered. We compared to all other countries in the world, we have the narrowest and the shortest recession. After that, we have created 1.3 million jobs. Most of them are full-time, high wage, in private sector. And also we plan to create another 1.3 million jobs by 2020. So we have doing well, and we cut tax, we cut small business tax, we cut tax from 15% down lower and lower to 9%. So we cut tax to grow the economy.
Okay, Ben, thank you. And Laura.
Yes. So in spite of the wealth created in Toronto, too many people in Toronto find themselves juggling part-time precarious work in order to make ends meet. So we need to make smart investments to grow our local economy and make sure that everyone in Toronto has access to good job opportunities. So we have a plan, and we have a plan that's similar in terms of the tax retwerking. So we're going to raise taxes for large corporations, and then we're going to lower the same amount of tax for small businesses, so that in that way the small businesses will have the money.
We'll cut you off there.
Sure.
Anybody like to reply?
Yeah, we do not only balance budget, we do 3 at the same time. We cut tax for business, for families. We increase benefit for the families, and we balance budget. We do the 3 at the same time.
Let's keep in mind what this tax cut actually means. The Conservatives are ultimately talking about tax cuts the most well-off in our society, whether it's with issues related to income splitting or increasing the TFSA from $5,500 to $10,000. How many Canadians do you know actually have $10,000 in after-tax money when they're struggling just to get by on a day-to-day basis? We will roll back, for example, that amount. We're also asking the wealthiest 1% of Canadians to share a little larger burden, so that all Canadians, namely the middle class and those aspiring to get into it, can actually do better.
Yeah, we cut tax for everybody, but we cut tax the most for low income and the medium income person. Look at Liberals' plan. They want to raise tax for top 1%. But what's next? They still have holes, have deficit. What can they do next? That's to raise tax from everyone, especially from middle income people, because they have permanent deficit in the future. And it's not a small deficit, tens of billions of dollars every year, year by year add up. Finally, they have to raise tax from everyone, that ordinary working people.
Jude. Sorry, Jude.
Like initially when we had this GST and the HST implemented, and everybody was feeling the burnt about it, it was supposed to apply to the debt, but in fact it was just slush funds to buy votes, and it was promised to abolish the debt, but we see that debt is not being abolished; it's still increasing, and even today we see that the approximately, if you look at the average, if you look at where we are at the moment. In terms of the debt, we're looking at about $17,000 per person. So we have to try to lower it down, not increase it, and spend our money wisely. Look at government waste. How much money is being wasted by government officials, and bring them to book, bring them accountable for that money, because it's tax dollars which is being misused, and we have to look at that.
Laura.
Sure. So I think we also need to talk about what kind of employment that we're supporting, what type of employment that we're going to focus on. And for the NDP, we're intending to boost innovation and support manufacturing jobs and by creating an innovation tax credit. We are supporting strategic industries like clean tech, aerospace, and auto sectors, which actually employ tens of thousands of people in the GTA and potentially more if we put the investment into these industries.
We support small business. In Scarborough Agincourt, there are a lot of small business like restaurants, offices. Small business are the hero of the country. They create most of the jobs. Most of the people are employed by small business rather than big business. So how do we help small business? We cut tax for small business so small business can survive, and then they can increase their investment, they can hire more people, and that's good for Scarborough Agincourt, for the economy in Scarborough Agincourt.
Laura.
Exactly. Actually, small businesses create 80% of new jobs in Canada. And there are a lot of small businesses in Scarborough Agincourt. This is true. And so I think all three parties are intending to cut the small business taxes. Is that correct?
To 9%, that's correct.
Yes, to 9%. Because again, it's the small businesses that would hire the extra person in Canada if they were given the money instead of the large corporations. Yeah,
all parties have the promise, oh, we are going to cut tax or increase benefit. But how do we compare them? We need to compare their money. Only the Conservative had surplus, so we can afford it. We can deliver the promises. If you look at the other parties, they promise tax cut, benefit increase, but they don't have money. They plan to have tens of billions of dollars of deficit every year. Where does the money come from? They cannot deliver their promises.
Correction, we are not intending to run a deficit, and we do have a costed plan on our website.
Okay.
I think what's really important is who's ultimately being honest with you to get the job done. And I'm proud to be part of a Liberal Party that's being honest with Canadians. And like Stephen Harper, who is, in fact, look, don't take it from me. Take it, for example, from Kevin Page, the former parliamentary budget officer, which was brought under the Conservative Party, apparently under the guise of accountability, and recently put out a book talking about the fact that Stephen Harper, okay, has been, in fact, playing fiscal shell games. Their so-called budget balance is being challenged even by the Bank of Canada.
Ben, would you like to respond?
Let's look at how Liberal broke their promises. For example, the Liberal in the history promised to eliminate GST, but they did not deliver it. We, the Conservative, we promised to cut the GST. We delivered it. The GST was cut from 7% to 6% and further down to 5%. So we are the party who keep the promise. We deliver our promises. And if you look at our budget, we have surplus, and that's the fact. That's the number. It's not speculation. But look at the Liberals. They plan to have tens of billions of deficit, and they are proud of being a deficit person, and that does not make any sense for this country, for this economy.
Jude.
At the end of the day, we've got to look at the man on the street, an immigrant come into the country. He's got to pay rent, he's got to buy food, and he's got to commute. If we cannot deliver that to the common man, we failed in our job. And we've got to take accountability for every person living in this country as well.
Okay. I think at that point, we'll move on to this. You're leading the way, Jude.
Thank you.
Our third question. Immigrants make up 67.8% of the population of Scarborough Agincourt, the highest such percentage for any federal riding. Currently, Canada accepts 250,000 immigrants every year, the highest intake per capita in the world. The present government is focused on skilled migrants chosen for what they can contribute to the economy. Now, would you advocate changing our current approach to immigration? And Jude, I believe you lead the way on this one.
The Christian Heritage Party is always welcoming immigrants, and we have a comprehensive immigration platform. One of the prerequisites when you look for the immigrants when they come to the country is to make sure that they have the kind of skills that is what we need in Canada as well. So when you're looking at immigration, so we don't have a gap between where the immigrant is and what is the need of the country. And if we can kind of find that a more realistic gap, then we will find that the person is able to integrate into our society in a very smooth and easy manner.
Okay, thank you very much, Ben.
Yes, under the previous Liberal government, we had about 100,000 black logs. Many people have to wait for 7-8 years until their cases are processed, and we are clearing this black log. And also, under the Liberal government, they charge the immigration lending fee, about $1,000, even to babies. We cut that fee into half. And also, they have frozen the immigration service for 13 years, and we tripled it. So under Conservative government, we have more immigrants than Liberal.
We'll cut you off there. And Laura.
Sure. Canada has been a beacon of hope for immigrants and refugees alike. Immigration helps grow our economy, foster innovation, and increase trade. More than that, it's part of who we are as a country. So the NDP will increase resources to reduce the backlog in the applications and put a greater priority on family reunification, especially the reunion of children with parents. We're also going to restore $30 million in unspent funding for the Foreign Credential Recognition Program, which will help immigrants get jobs in what they were doing back in their home countries.
Okay. All right, thank you very much, Arnold.
The Conservatives should be ashamed of their immigration policy. In fact, they've focused on immigration and looking at immigrants as temporary foreign workers, which was a disastrous program under their particular watch. Instead of recognizing that people that come here to Canada and want to contribute to Canada ultimately need a pathway to citizenship. And their entire approach has been to make it more difficult for newcomers to actually become Canadian citizens. And we will change all of those approaches that they have brought in.
All right, we'll stop you there, Arnold.
This statement is false. Actually, under Conservative government, we have more new immigrants, and the more new immigrants are becoming citizens. Last year, we have a record number that 256,000 immigrants have become citizens. So actually, it's the Conservative Party who got more immigrants and got more citizens. And more so, recently, Justin Trudeau announced he will cut the super visa. Many people like me, I'm an immigrant. Came to Canada by myself, and I hope to help that more families, more visitors to come to this wonderful country. Yeah.
Okay. Arnold, you'd like to respond?
First of all, let me just put an end to ongoing the Conservative lie that we're going to cut the super visa. That is absolutely not the case. But let's again look at the actual record. Sure, we've maybe had a slight increase in the number of Canadians that are actually allowed to enter Canada, but the actual capacity of those individuals to become citizens has been made much more difficult by this particular government. How did they deal with things like the backlog, for example? They just arbitrarily dropped tens of thousands of people off the list, namely those who had been in the queue since before 2008, and they dropped them. The other thing I would point out to is family reunification. Again, they stopped it for 2 years, and now they've left a tepid 5,000 parents and grandparents come back in, and that queue gets filled up within the first few weeks every time it opens up. We will at least double that immediately upon forming government.
Okay, Arnold. Jude.
Well, we need to look at the immigrant and give them the information they need about what they can expect in Canada. Because it could be a shock, it could be a cultural shock, it could be something that they just can't handle. If we project the image of Canada as a strong, powerful, prosperous, rich, affluent country, and they're coming there to this country with those dreams and aspirations that I'm going there and I'm going to be a big shot. And when they come here, it's like a total different contrast. They've got to struggle to get through the rent and pay the bills and things like that. And even the social shock could be overwhelming for many of the residents. They can't handle it. It's too much. So we got to inform them in an honest, open forum that if you come to Canada, this is what you're going to expect. These are our moral values. These are our social values. Would you fit in?
Okay. Laura.
Sure. Like I said before, immigration is part of who we are as a country, especially in Scarborough Agincourt. It's hard to imagine what it would be like without the immigration system we have. But I did want to bring a bit of attention to the Foreign Credentials Recognition Program, which hasn't been brought up yet, except for me, because this is a program that's going to change everything. There are doctors coming over from abroad and ending up as taxi drivers or working in convenience stores. And we need doctors. This is ridiculous. We need to put that money back where it belongs and recognize the credentials that are there. So this is something that's going to be a priority for us.
Yeah, actually, Conservative Party brought the Foreign Credential Recognition Program, and our Prime Minister Stephen Harper already announced that we are going to enhance the program to help that for immigrants with foreign credentials to get the credentials recognized fastly, more effectively, and help them to start a new career here in Canada. It's Conservative who started and enhanced it.
Look, the issue again is, it's just, let's keep in mind that foreign credential recognition is actually regulated. I mean, I'm in a regulated profession. I'm a lawyer by trade. It's regulated at the provincial level. I've actually worked on this file at the provincial level. It was actually the Government of Ontario initiative and leadership that actually allowed for much greater enhancement in welcoming of foreign trained professionals into Ontario. What we need is national leadership. And that national leadership needs a prime minister and a minister willing to actually convene meetings with their provincial and territorial colleagues to actually, for example, convey this information on our immigration system, so when a person is applying from a foreign country, they know what is actually needed in order to qualify and ultimately become a practicing trained professional here in Canada. That leadership is still absent.
Laura.
Yes, I'm glad you brought that up, because we will be offering grants to professional bodies to develop a harmonized national standard for credential recognition with a single point of contact, which means that we're going to have a national standard. It's going to be more transparent for people coming from abroad. Will they able to be a doctor or whatever they were here? They will know. So this is something that we are going to do as well. Thanks.
So,
Jude and then you.
We need to attract professionals. We need professionals. We need to attract what our market demands are. Look at the market demands. What are the jobs out that are available, and where do we fit it? We need more people in construction with all the infrastructure. Then do we have the skill to match that construction so that it's done in a timely manner? We don't have all these roads blocked and our infrastructure not supporting a supply. So demand and supply, where do we meet, is very important.
when immigrants come, first they need their foreign credentials recognized. It's our Conservative government who initially started this program. And second, they want a job. And our government has been doing very well in creating jobs. Since 2009, we created 1.3 million jobs, and many new immigrants have found jobs in Canada. Most of the jobs are full-time, private sector, and high-waged. And we are going to create another 1.3 million jobs. And of course, many new immigrants will be able to find good, well-paying jobs in Canada.
I think on that note, we will move on to our next question. It's since the Kyoto Protocol was signed by the Chang government in 1990, Canada has failed to reach targets for greenhouse gas emissions year after year. Do you believe the government needs to make climate change a larger priority? And Bin, we are back to you for a first response.
Yeah, so the fact here is, since 2006, Canada has reduced greenhouse emissions by 3%. At the same time, we grow the economy by 13%. So you can see we're doing two things together: reduce greenhouse emission, grow the economy. We are the party who can do both. We think protecting environment and the growing economy are both important to this country. We deliver both.
Laura.
Sure. The NDP is the major national party championing the environment this election. Over the past 4 years, we've proved that we are the party that is fighting for this. We have a leader that was an environment minister in Quebec. We actually passed Jack Layton's Climate Change Accountability Act, which was blocked by the Senate, which said that we would keep the emissions in line with basically the Kyoto Protocol, which is below 2 degrees Celsius. So we passed that act, and we'll pass it again.
I'll cut you off there, Laura. And Arnold.
This is the government, the Harper government, which was the only one to repeal our signature on the Kyoto Protocol. And now they're taking credit for the incredible work that provinces have done in terms of lowering greenhouse gas emissions. For example, in Ontario, it was the closure of our coal plants that made the most significant impact on the reduction of greenhouse gases. Let's also not remember that we've been in an economic recession, one of the longest and deepest economic recessions in recent memory. And it's because of our slowing economy that, in fact, our greenhouse gases have dropped, not because of any concerted action.
All right, thank you, Arnold. And Jude.
Thank you. And at the Christian Heritage Party, we want to communicate to the people, our viewers as well, that it's not carbon dioxide and water vapor who are the main so-called pollutants or the greenhouses. Now, both are essential to agriculture and indeed to all life on Earth. Furthermore, the global temperature does not follow carbon dioxide level. As IPCC computer models assume, it leads it. The higher global temperature causes rising carbon dioxide levels, not the other way around. So we got to look at even implementing tax now.
Jude, I'm going to have to cut you off there. Those opening answers are only 30 seconds. Bin.
Yeah, the Liberal government, they signed international agreement without any intention to doing it, and that hurt our reputation. It's our Conservative government. We promise, we deliver. So we did two things together: cut greenhouse emission by 3%, and at the same time we grew the economy by 13%. We are the ones to be capable of delivering environmental protection and economic growth.
Laura.
Yes, I think we absolutely need to talk about local pollution as well as carbon emissions. And one thing that the Conservative government did do these past 4 years is take away the protections for most of our waters. We used to have the Navigable Waters Protection Act, which protected waters from pollution. The Humber, the Don River, the Rouge River, other rivers, lakes and ponds and creeks in Toronto, they are now no longer protected. And this is something that's important. Our water is something that we should be using for generations to come, and we might not be able to.
Jude.
Well, protecting our environment means protecting the health of Canadians. So we got to see the connection. If I look at the environment out of context of the person, I've lost my focus. I've got to think everything in terms of the person, and that's what I keep stressing on, the people. In all these questions, I'm focusing on the people. So therefore, what is the real pollution? It's not the carbon dioxide and those things, but the main thing is the chemicals. We are ignoring the chemicals that are released in the environment every year. We have to control that. Those are the big ones, just escaping without us getting any of our attention as well.
Okay, Jude. Arnold?
The real fundamental difference between us and the Conservative Party is that the Conservatives actually don't believe in actual science, evidence-based decision-making. I'm proud that Justin Trudeau will attend the Paris Summit in December 2015 should he become Prime Minister, and convene a First Ministers meeting shortly thereafter to talk about the importance of climate change and actually working in concert with our provinces and territories, something that Stephen Harper has simply refused to do in his entire tenure as Prime Minister.
Vin.
The fundamental difference between the Conservative and the Liberal Party is the Liberal always give empty promise. They cannot keep their promise, but the Conservative, we promise, we deliver. For example, on the environment issue, we did cut greenhouse emission. We did grow the economy. So we have the money, we have surplus, we can take more measures on environment, on everything. So that's the fundamental difference. We have the surplus, we have the money to deliver our promises.
We need to look at the climate geoengineering agenda and the threat of global dimming. Now, these are realities. I mean, it's not fair to say, like, you did this, I did this, you did this, but let's look at the issue and let's say, what can I do for you? These are issues we're having. We're having a global dimming now. We're having all these issues coming up, and so we got to look at climate geoengineering agenda to put us in the right direction, have the dollars in place, and then we can move forward to have a better environment for the people and for generations yet to come.
Okay, Laura.
Sure. I also wanted to talk about our Canada Plan for Water. So we are going to include legislation in our first year that will include ensure safe drinking water for Canadians and ban bulk export of water. We're also going to work with the province to establish the Rouge National Urban Park, which my neighbor and MP Rathika Sitsabaisen has been the person to fight for this for the past 4 years to make the Rouge Park protected.
Okay. Let's move on, and we'll talk about the Senate right now. And there's been the expense scandals. A couple of smiles, a couple of giggles over there, and many are questioning the need for the Chamber of Sober Second Thought. Yeah. So, what future role do you see for the Senate? And I believe, Laura, you're first on
Starts
this one.
with me.
Yes.
Well, I'm not a big fan of the Senate, and I don't think anyone in our party is. The Senate hasn't been functioning well, basically since it was created. It doesn't have the powers to do what it was set out to do. It just doesn't. And we saw in the last Parliament that, they didn't block any legislation except the Climate Change Accountability Act. Really, you don't come to work most days of the year, but you come to work to vote down the Climate Change Accountability Act. I think this whole thing is ridiculous. Okay. We need to Laura, it's a waste of money too.
All right, I'll cut you off there. And Arnold.
Only the Liberal Party has actually made a significant move to deal with the Senate by simply expelling all of the so-called Liberal senators and making them truly independent. The NDP plan is simply unworkable. They talk about abolishing the Senate, but it is not going to be possible without the consent of the provinces, and we already know that Quebec and Ontario have indicated that that is not a priority for them.
All right, thank you very much, Arnold. Jude.
Again, we got to realize that it's Senate. Why Canada has a Senate is mainly to ensure that a simple majority in Parliament cannot override the rights of a regional minority, and also to enable the government to call men and women of extraordinary ability into Parliament. So senators should be named by the provinces they represent, and the decision of whether to elect or appoint them should be left to each province.
Okay, so thank you very much. Ben.
Yeah, it's the Conservative government who introduced the limit of on the terms of senators, and the Liberal senators were strongly against that at that time. And also the Supreme Court has made the decision that when you work with the provinces to reform the senator, and that's the way to go, yeah.
Okay, thank you very much, Ben.
Can I respond?
Yes.
Sure. So I think if we do sit down with the provinces, which we intend to do quite often, if you've heard Tom Mulcair speak, if we sit down with the provinces and we say, look, these senators, they're not really doing anything for you. They barely ever show up to work. They're not representing you. We can take this money and we can put it towards healthcare or childcare or something that's actually going to benefit the citizens of this country. And if we sit down with them and we say that we'll move this money somewhere else, somewhere more useful, then we can come to an agreement, and I'm confident of that.
Okay, Ben.
Yeah, senator reform, firstly, it's a Supreme Court decision, so it's a legal process. And the Supreme Court requires that the federal government to work with the provinces. So we cannot just say whatever you want to do, right? This is a court decision. We have to work with the provinces.
Yes,
okay.
And we
Jude.
will.
So again, senators should be seated by region, not by party, to encourage them to represent their regions and not their parties, so that we get a real feel of what's going on in that particular region. Moreover, Senate reform will require an amendment to the Constitution. We need not be afraid of reopening the Constitution, but it should be done in a concert with other amendments to strengthen the Confederation. Therefore, Senate reform should become a part of a larger constitutional reform package as well.
Arnold.
Let's be practical. Okay, Senate reform opens a conundrum of issues on the constitutional issue. And there are, I think, much greater national priorities that Canadians need to address at this time, namely our poor economic performance, the fact that job growth remains tepid, and that infrastructure in our cities are crumbling, and that we need to make those strategic investments, and also finally to deal with issues like our environment. Those should be our focus, not on dealing with a broken institution like the Senate.
Okay. I think,
yes,
would you like last word?
Yes, the Supreme Court decision is there, and we're working with the provinces. And also the priority here is economy. We have been growing economy, and the economy is doing well. In the last 2 months, we have growth. And in the rest of this year, we are going to have growth again. We had surplus last year. We're ahead of schedule. We had surplus in Q1 this year, $5 billion. So we're on the right track. We're growing economy, and we're creating more and more jobs.
Okay, thank you very much, Ben.
So we need to make sure that the senates are well represented and representing the situation of the people in that region, versus just having the parliament and having all the people voting from another region. They don't have a feel of what's happening in that region. So a proper representation.
Or I might even just add to what Jude is saying, which is having senators answer only to the Prime Minister's office.
Or just not have them at all. I think save the money.
If you can.
Yeah,
Good luck.
That's
Good
true.
luck.
That's true.
We respect the Supreme Court decision.
Okay.
Yeah.
We'll move on then. Our next question is about the Syrian refugee crisis, and it's seen governments around the world respond in many different ways. What stance should Canada take on this issue? And Arnold, you are first.
The government's response on the Syrian refugee crisis should make us all ashamed. It literally required Minister Alexander to be dragged kicking and screaming to change his particular policy. I'm proud that Justin Trudeau and the Liberal Party immediately recognized that this is a humanitarian crisis of an epidemic proportion, and that we need to dramatically increase our commitment right away. And that's why we've committed to welcoming 25,000 Syrian refugees within the year, and adding $100 million of investment to process them, and $100 million to UNHCR.
Jude?
Thank you. The Christian Heritage Party always believes that the foundation of a just refuge policy must reflect to the core our national Judeo-Christian heritage, which is love one's neighbor and hospitality and compassion for victims of oppression, persecution, and natural disaster. Now, at the same time, we've got to be prudent as well. So we need to, in the process, make sure that we have legitimate refugees seeking refuge in Canada. We need to track and stop and even arrest, if needed, or deport individuals engaged in human smuggling and other illegal practices.
Jude, thank you. Ben?
Yeah, when we look at refugee, it's a result of problem. It's not a cause of problem. What causes refugee? We need to understand. Is it ISIS? They are killing people. They are murdering people. They are beheading people. So the conservative government has 3 levels of actions. First, fight ISIS. Second, we provide humanitarian aid. Third, we are getting refugees. Actually, there are refugees coming to Pierce International Airport every day. So we are doing things on the 3 levels. Accepting refugee alone is only part of it.
We'll cut you off there. And Laura.
Absolutely. Having grown up in Scarborough, I grew up with a lot of kids whose parents came as refugees. And I think if you did grow up in Scarborough, you know that refugees contribute to our economy in a very significant way. And they've contributed to making Canada what it is. And I think the response has been shameful. And we need to do our part as part of the global community and accept more refugees.
Okay. Would anybody like to respond? Jude.
Again, at the same time, when we are getting the refugees into the country, we have to make sure that we have the infrastructure to take care of them. We can't just get them in the country, look after them for 1 year, that 1 year window to say, okay, this is the 1 year, we are going to support you, and then we drop you down after that. So we have to continue. That 1 year window is not sufficient, not enough time for us to help the refugee in the process of integrating into our society.
Actually, I have met hundreds of refugees. They came from Syria. I went to a community center in Scarborough and I met hundreds of them. So the fact is we are getting refugees. And also, it costs money, right? Our conservative government has a surplus to afford taking the refugees and taking care of them, help them find the jobs and settle in Canada.
I find it ironic that Bin says that she's met hundreds of Syrian refugees, given that Minister Alexander couldn't even tell us how many Syrian refugees were actually admitted into Canada. We know that initially it was just a few hundred that were actually in this country. So I'd love to meet these particular individuals that have been welcomed supposedly with open arms by this conservative government.
Yes,
again,
I did meet them in Scarborough. We did meet them in Scarborough, yes.
And they're concentrated in one place in the country because there have been so few of them that have actually been admitted by this government because they won't even tell us how many have actually gotten here.
Yes, we are getting refugees, and also we are doing 2 other things. Remember, refugee is part of this problem. We need to understand more deeply what causes refugee. Is the ISIS, the terrorists who are doing really violent, terrible things in those countries. So we have to do things at the 3 levels. First, we need to fight against the ISIS, so they no longer kill people, murder people there. Then we need to provide humanitarian aid. Then we take care of refugees. If there's still ISIS murdering people there, in those countries there are hundreds of millions of people. And how do we solve this problem, fundamentally solve the problem? We need to do 3 things together, not only one thing. Taking refugee alone, it will not fix all the problems.
All right, Jude, we'll let you have the last word here.
The Christian Heritage Party will move towards processing refugee claims in the country of origin through its Canadian embassy. And this is the way we can see that the basis of refugees claims can be properly verified. Okay. So if you're sitting in Ottawa looking at the papers, everything looks good, it's something else over there. The embassy in that country can process the claim, and we get a true picture of the person whom we are getting.
Okay, we're gonna move on now. Just get one more question. We're almost out of time. Affordable housing and homelessness is a top concern for many in the riding. Do you feel there is a need for a national housing strategy? And I believe Jude is correct. Right?
Yeah,
thanks. We definitely need to provide better housing facilities for Canadians, especially when I look at the riding we are in presently at Scarborough Agincourt. I went personally to hand over my flyers and meet some people. I've been living in that area for over 11 years now, and some of the units they lack the services they should have, like the basic needs. I say you need to make sure we have good, clean drinking water, good heating in the winter. It's really cold. We had a very tough winter last year.
Okay,
make sure we have that.
I'll cut you off there. And Bin.
Yes, And in Scarborough Agincourt, there is a need for social housing, affordable housing. This area has been Liberal riding for more than 2 decades. It again shows that the Liberal MP has not done their jobs. If we look at the national strategy in the federal budget 2015, you can see that we do have billions of dollars for affordable housing, and that's doable, affordable within our balanced budget. And also for people who need affordable housing, another way to help them is to help them get jobs. We are creating jobs.
We're going to have to cut you off there, Ben. Laura.
Sure. So we used to have a national housing program federally, and it was actually under a Liberal government that was killed. And then the Conservatives, you know, they've had 10 years to bring it back to life, and they just haven't done that. So too many Toronto families, too many Scarborough families are sitting on wait lists for affordable housing. And I've knocked on doors and I've met many of these people that are living in apartment buildings, you know, 10 people to a bachelor apartment. And this is real poverty. And just because you don't see these people on the streets doesn't mean that poverty doesn't exist. And it's something that we absolutely need to do something about. We will bring back the National Housing Program.
Thank you, Laura. And Arnold.
I absolutely agree that we need a national housing strategy, and that's why I'm proud to be part of a platform that is committing $20 billion for social infrastructure, including important investments in public housing. We know that housing is getting increasingly unaffordable in Toronto, and that's why this unprecedented investment, the fact that the federal government's actually going to get back into the business of assisting provinces and municipalities to build public housing, is an important step.
Okay, Arnold, thank you very much. We unfortunately do not have any time for rebuttals. We have to move into our closing statements right now. And we're going to do these in reverse order of our opening statements. So first up is Jude Coutinho of the Christian Heritage Party. Jude, you have 30 seconds.
The right to life is the foundation of all other rights. It is a right without which no other right has any meaning. Abortion, assisted suicide, and euthanasia devalue human life. Abortion kills 110,000 Canadian babies every year. And euthanasia in February 2015, the Supreme Court of Canada struck down on the ban of assisted suicide and gave Parliament 1 year to come up with a law that would be constitutional.
Okay. Jude, I'm going to have to end you there. We're on a tight schedule for these 30 seconds. And Arnold Chan, the Liberal.
Thank you for joining us in this debate today. It's been a privilege serving as your Member of Parliament this past year. Since going to Ottawa, I fought hard for the issues that matter to the residents of Scarborough Agincourt, whether it's making sure that in our platform that we will have strong investments for public transit so that the Scarborough subway can be built, or fighting with local residents to fight a local bus garage that I felt would impact a vulnerable population of seniors. Okay. In my view, what's important is that you need a representative in
Arnold,
Ottawa.
We'll cut you off there. Laura Patrick of the NDP.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone, for watching. We have a plan to make life easier for you. We will invest in jobs for youth, manufacturing, and small businesses. We will work with the city and province to build Scarborough Transit. And we will use your tax money for a better use for healthcare and retirement security. A better government is possible. Don't let them tell you it can't be done.
Okay. Laura, thank you very much. And Ben Chang of the Conservative Party. Ben.
The Conservative message is to keep tax low, increase benefits, have a balanced budget, protect our kids, families, protect seniors, and most importantly, protect our great nation. We have surplus to deliver our promise. The Liberals will have tens of billions of deficit permanently. They do not have any money to keep their promise. They will break their promise. So please vote for Conservative.
Ben, thank you very much. Thank you all for joining us today. And thank you for joining us on the local campaign. Airtimes for other debates can be found on rogerstv.com. I'm Roger Peterson. Thanks for watching.